It's time to make sense out of a rather confusing model. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. The Gibson Custom Shop, as we think of it today, was first opened in late 1993. That's when they finally started to do Les Paul reissues, as well as research and develop some very interesting models. But today we're going to learn about one of the Custom Shop's earliest attempts at making a Les Paul just as good, but lighter, and mixing some vintage elements to it. We're talking about the Les Paul Bantam/Florentine series. But before we get too deep into it, let's just go ahead and check out this cool example that I found. Brace yourselves, my friend. This is one of the big metallic shiny ones with the metal flake that was just going to capture your attention. So you're going to notice it's a Les Paul with Trini Lopez style diamond F-holes. Yeah, that's not a spec you see on all of these, and we'll learn a little bit more about that here in a second, but that's why I had to pick this one up to document it. But basically what Gibson was trying to do with these things is create a lightweight custom shop Gibson Les Paul. So it's built just like a normal Les Paul, but this is the very beginning of offering chambering weight relief. However, I think Gibson was still a little bit, I don't know if people are gonna like us chambering out these guitars or not, so they paired it with these F-holes in order to make it look kind of like an ES335. But they're not constructed in a similar way. Because a 335 is basically a plywood guitar. They have 3-ply tops, backs, and sides. They bend and press them into the shape. Whereas this is still a regular Les Paul. It's got a maple top that's been carved, then it's got a full mahogany back, except for it features chambering weight relief. The sound holes were just added for aesthetic purposes. So as I just told you, the custom shop opened in late 1993, but the Bantam series was first introduced in 1995. It was known as the Bantam Elite, and then they also had the Bantam Elite Plus. Basically, the difference being, do you have a crazy awesome flame and or quilt top, or do you just have a finished color? And I was always personally confused, where did the name Bantam come from? I always think chickens when I think Bantams, because that is a type of aggressive chicken, and because I love the game Billy Hatcher on the GameCube. But no, Bantam's actually short for bantamweight, and that is a class within boxing for a super lightweight class. Google told me it's between 112 and 118 pounds. So yeah, a lightweight Les Paul that still packs a punch and is an aggressive chicken. Okay, it makes complete sense now. However, only the first year Bantams actually have that name due to a legal dispute with Washburn. They had a Bantam series about basses. There was a headless version, then kind of a slightly more traditional one. So rather than duke it out in court over who can use it, they just changed it in 1996 to the Les Paul Florentine. As far as I can tell, spec-wise, they are identical. However, calling it a Florentine was a little bit confusing because that refers to the sharp cutaway that Ted Nugent prefers on his Birdlands. Whereas a Les Paul's traditional cutaway here is actually referred to as a Venetian carve. It's a little bit more rounded. So why are we calling a Venetian carve Les Paul a Florentine? I don't know. It's just one of those things. To make things even more confusing, in the 2000s, legitimate Florentine cutaway Les Pauls did exist. We're talking things like the model that was also called the Les Paul Florentine, that was offered in a cool sunburst finish. You can check it out here. But then there's also the LP295, which is blending a Les Paul and an ES295, so of course you have to have that. And then there was also a Supreme done up with a true Florentine cut. But technically, the original F-hold Les Paul Florentines were first. And then later on, Gibson Memphis came out with an ES LP lineup. Do not confuse these guitars. They are completely different. They might look the same in photos, but the later Memphis ES LP guitars are actually more like a real 335 in the fact that they're not just chambered out mahogany bodies, they're pressed like we're talking about. Those things are ridiculously lightweight, so if that's what you're going for, you might like it, but if you tried one of those and hated it, thought it was too light, that's where these true Florentines come in and shine, because in my opinion, these still feel like regular Les Pauls. They're honestly not that much lighter, and they sound about the same, but they just have a little bit more warmth to their tone. It's just something you have to try. A lot of people like these things. There's a reason why they're pretty scarce on the market. Well, actually, two different reasons. When they were first introduced, they were $6,800 brand new. Adjust for inflation, you can see what you're working with here, and by the late 90s, they had to be bumped all the way up to $8,000. So needless to say, there wasn't a lot of demand for these things, probably because of that price tag. But with these things being so ridiculously expensive, expensive. A lot of them were custom orders, and they also did some cool limited runs. Like, for example, there are some out there that don't have F-holes at all. I've seen a few Florentine standards. There's a really cool Carina run that I've seen with and without F-holes. I've seen at least one example have P90 pickups. And then we have what we're talking about today, the Florentine Diamond Sparkle series. I'm really glad I found this old flyer because I was kind of perplexed when this one showed up. It was the first one that I had seen with the Trini Lopez style F-holes, but this was known as the Florentine Diamond Sparkle series. They offered it in gold, silver, and red finish. How many of each did they make? I'm not really sure. Probably very, very few. But the poster lists this as a completely separate model because it says there's the Florentine Plus, and then the Diamond Sparkle series. You can see all these colors that they're saying that they came in: Vintage Sunburst, Wine Red, Ebony, Heritage Cherry Sunburst, Ember Glow, Antique Natural. But there's lots of sparkle finishes on regular Florentines. You don't have to just get the diamond F-holes for that. There's just a whole bunch of custom color stuff out there. These are some really ridiculously beautiful guitars. They generally run you anywhere between $4,000 and $8,000 on the market today. And perhaps the most famous user of one of these is Noel Gallagher of Oasis. He was very well known for using a silver sparkle one that he just recently sold for ridiculous money. So these things only had about a 5-year run in the mid to late 90s. The latest serial number I've ever seen is 2002. However, I think some of those might have just been custom orders because by the late 90s, these were pretty much gone. However, Gibson did not forget about this new chambering weight relief because you have the continuation of this series with the Les Paul Catalina, which then birthed into the Elegant, and then eventually in 2007 we saw them toy around with it within Gibson USA to less fanfare. Because custom shop chambered guitars are completely different than the Gibson USA style. Custom shop looks like this. It's one big connected tone chamber. If you were to drop a ball from the toggle switch cavity, it would fall down and you could take it out down by the pots. Whereas USA style, you can't actually access the chambers. They're closed off. So there you go. There is the crash course on the Gibson Bantam / Florentine history. It's a very, very misunderstood model, mainly because a lot of information online doesn't exist, compiled in a way that makes sense that everybody can find. So I'm happy that this unique one showed up so I could get the opportunity to document another one of these. So what's my first impressions of this one? Honestly, I'm not a big fan of the diamond F-holes on this one. I just thought it was kind of a unique feature that I hadn't seen before because I love the stylistic design of the F-holes on the Florentines. But the sparkly finish is pretty cool, as is common with all Gibson sparkle finishes. This has finish checking all up and down it. I'm not sure when you're going to be able to see that angle, but in person it's completely spider webbed, but it actually has a cool vibe. The only downside to most of these sparkle ones is they paint the back black, which is a real letdown because the mahogany of the 90s is beautiful. You can find some quilted and flamed mahogany backs and necks. It feels like it's going to be around 8.5 pounds would be my guess. So it's light, but not too light. But I think we need to learn more about the inner workings of these things now that we understand the history. So let's go ahead, throw it on the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs. Inside the Diamond Sparkle Florentine, unfortunately, disaster struck. This did not end up being an all-original example like I thought it was. And what first tipped me off is when I put it on the workbench, I noticed that the pole pieces were obnoxiously shiny as compared to the rest of the aged nickel hardware. And sure enough, when I flipped the pickups, those are not the 57 classics that are supposed to be in here. It reads JC Neck and JC James Bridge. But hey, at least it tells us the magnet types, Alnico 5, in both the neck and bridge. Looks like that might be the date of creation, so mid-2018, and we should have readings around 7.5K ohms and almost 10. Now, as far as what these pickups are, I had to ask my Instagram followers. Thankfully, Mr. Adams here was able to find an old video of somebody who put these pickups in his guitar. These are Noah Love JC pickups. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any information out about them, but at least we know what they are. But if anybody has a 90s era set of 57 classics, please let me know. The 57 classic is still in production. I could put regular ones in there, but I would rather find a set that came out of a 90s guitar. But within the circuit, I get 9.4K ohms in the bridge, 7.72 in the neck, and the middle, just for fun, 4.24. But here's the next thing that broke my heart. Somebody has replaced 2 of these knobs. I do believe the original ones are this. Do you see how large and bold this print is? It says volume and it says tone. You come over here, that's definitely your more modern / vintage style being tiny. Now it's possible that they were just changing over at this time period, but I'm guessing it's these guys that have been replaced. That's just your regular 2 volumes and 2 tones. But here's what the bridge currently on this guitar looks like. It's the later Schaller-made version. So in the 70s and 80s, it just said made in Germany, but they split it in the 90s for made in Germany. And that's right, despite being custom shop, these guys do have Nashville-style bridges. And then we have an ultra-lightweight tailpiece. I believe both of these to be original to the guitar. But since we have the Nashville bridge looking inside our cavity, it did not surprise me that we did not have a long neck tenon. That was really just reserved for the true reissues at this point. This was just a fun custom shop model to them. And all the cavities in this guitar is just completely painted black. Which is kind of a shame because I would have liked to have seen the maple top exposed in here, as well as some of the natural mahogany wood grain. But it almost seems like they just did a black coat first and then did the beautiful sparkle red on top of it. That way, when you're looking at this guitar, you don't see anything shining through color-wise. And the edges of the diamonds are also black, so the maple's not standing out, although I think that would have been an interesting effect. But inside this diamond F-hole, you can't actually see anything. They don't put a sticker in here like some ES guitars. But over here with the right lighting, you can actually see the backside of the backplate, but we'll take a look in here with an endoscope here in a second. The other replaced part on this guitar is the Dunlop strap locks. I can easily swap those out. But man, did this thing clean up beautifully or what? It had a whole bunch of finger gunk and whatnot on it that I was able to get off. And then the sparkles really just came to life. Kind of reminds me of a guitar that Taylor Swift would play or something. It's just really in your face, kind of an orangish red sparkle. But again, you've got the finish checking all over this. Here's a great angle that you can see all the finish checking I'm talking about. I am not exaggerating when I say it is all over the top of this thing, but it's got a vibe. Now, if you're curious, with such huge metal flakes in the finish, is it actually a nice even gloss finish? Not necessarily. You can actually feel how big the sparkles are, but it's very subtle. So I don't think your arm's going to notice it while playing, but like feeling it right here or catching it in the light just right, it's kind of like an orange peel effect, but it's just the metal flake, not actually orange peel. But moving on from our mahogany body with maple top, we've got a mahogany neck with an ebony fretboard. Specs are pretty basic as far as this guy goes, 22 medium jumbo style frets with your regular mother of pearl block inlays. This one's a little bit too early for the custom shop to really be playing with compound fretboard radiuses. They start doing that on like the Catalina series, so I guess it's kind of right when they started doing that. Unfortunately, there is some extreme divoting underneath the G string, which causes buzzing in the cowboy chord area, so that's kind of annoying. Some of the chords in this area don't quite fully ring out. So next time I go to Sweetwater, I think I might take this guitar with me, see if they can run it through the Plek machine to fix that. But at the very least, it needs a little bit of a level recrown job. But I measure the standard 12 inches, the 24 3/4 inch scale length. Looks like we got close to a 17-degree headstock pitch and a 4-degree neck angle with a nut width of 1.69 inches, which increases to 2.04 by the 12th. But it's got a pretty chunky neck, 0.96 at the first fret neck depth and 1.05 by the 12th. Here's that neck profile at the 1st fret and the 12th fret. It is actually quite rounded. I didn't realize that before about these Florentine customs. But now moving on to our headstock. You gotta remember, this is like the birth of the modern era Gibson logo. Like this looks just like a brand new Gibson guitar, right? So it's around the mid-90s that they start to change that. One of the earliest ones that I know of when they used this new headstock style, the Super 400 inlay Les Paul Custom limited run. However, most guitars produced in the early 90s still have that semi-what vintage blocky looking logo. But as is common in the 90s, and even today, you're going to have the cracking around the Gibson logo as well as the custom emblem, but it's just a little bit more extreme in this era. It's either that or they've had more time to age. Truss rod cover reads Les Paul Custom. Our truss rod's looking in perfect shape. We've got our inspection sticker, and you can see the glue for the headstock veneer, as well as our mahogany neck exposed right there. Moving over to the backside, polished up perfectly, right? But you definitely do have some slightly deeper scratches and some impressions back here in the black that just pretty much hide because the finish is just way too reflective right now. But all things considered, definitely reasonable shape for one of these. I would really love to see a gold one now that I know it exists, because a gold sparkle top on one of these with the black back, oh yeah. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't remove this back plate. For the toggle switch, I need to get a smaller suction pulley because that's how I get stubborn back plates off. The only downside to it is usually you're left with like a little ring residue, but most times that cleans off. So here's what we've got going on here. This wiring job looks pretty good, but if you know something's been replaced, you can tell this solder is just a little bit shinier, and that appears to be for our neck pickup. And then only if you know the other pickups have been replaced, that's when you kind of go, oh, okay, maybe that's not 100% factory stock. But this pot dates to 1976, the first week. But it looks like our tones are from the 23rd week of 1995. This one also matches that as well. And we just have our regular ceramic disc capacitors. So let's go ahead and crank out that endoscope to see what's really hiding in here. All right, we'll start in up through the cutaway area. So here we can see where all the wires are coming through our pickup channels that are routed out there. Notice you don't have one for the neck pickup because it all feeds through the same area right here that we were seeing in our pickup cavities. But as far as what we've got going up here, yeah, it just looks like they take a router. You can actually see the lines all around it from when they were routing it all out. So far this seems similar to what we've seen on Elegance in the past. However, they might have routed them using something different because I don't remember seeing these ridges, but I don't think I ever actually endoscoped the Elegance and Catalinas that I had owned previously. But now let's go towards this way in the body. So we've got this whole center block area, but it gets carved away right here, so it is kind of semi-hollow in construction. But down here you have an extra bump, just like any other 335. That's there for the bottom strap button to have something to grip into. But over here is the other side of the body that you don't normally see. And here we can see the other side of the diamond F-hole. And then further up from here is the toggle switch cavity. So yeah, these are pretty much exactly like the Elegance. It's the custom shop chambering style where they just route it all out around here, all the way up through there. So again, if you drop something in through here, it would just fall in there, into there. So if you need to hide anything or smuggle some extra money, technically you could do that. But it looks like these utilize thick binding in the cutaway, so non-historic spec. And we definitely have a little bit of wear and tear along the edges, but nothing too crazy. I mean, this thing polished up pretty good. I kind of took a chance on this one because it looked pretty dirty in the seller's photos and kind of scratched up in certain places, but I thought, you know what, I bet that would clean up all right. I mean, that's definitely the worst right there is that little ding. And I was able to restore our strap buttons with original style. Now, working up the back of the neck. There's actually quite a few light impressions on this one. Nothing too crazy. The black finish hides it, but it's definitely not a perfect guitar. So I think 8 out of 10 is a very good conservative grading on this one. But you can see our Gibson Custom Shop decal back here. You've got our Grover tuners with our keystones for our tips. And then our serial number 691102. So that's how you know it's 1996, is by the leading digit. And there is a very small ding right here that goes through the finish, but you've got to really be looking for that one. All said and done, wow, I was actually a little bit high. It's only 8 pounds, 3 ounces. So yeah, they definitely accomplished what they were looking for here. But that's the great thing about these. They're light as far as what the scale tells you, but they still feel correct. They don't feel overly light, and that's what I want to emphasize on these original Florentines. They really don't feel that different from a regular Les Paul. But let's go ahead, plug this one in, and hear how it sounds. So far, I'd say I'm really liking these aftermarket pickups. I like them best finger-picked. They've got a really nice jazzy, warm, and full tone. But some of that might also come down to our construction here. Let's go ahead and kick on some dirt. Now that we know all about the Trini, Paul, what are my final thoughts on this thing? I've got to say, very pleased with this. They might not be the stock pickups, but maybe that's where some of the magic comes from as well. But having it on a strap, oh my goodness. Handling this guitar, I didn't realize just how chunky this neck is. It really almost is our 8 baseball bat territory here. This is one of the fattest necks I've had on a Les Paul Custom, but that seems to be different than the first Florentine that I had. So maybe this particular run with the diamond F-holes was a little bit different. Although I am kind of sad these diamond ones don't have like fancier inlays, like the split diamonds like you'd find on a Gibson US1. That'd be pretty cool. Besides the huge neck profile on this one, the body really is almost weightless when you have it on a strap. I just think the initial advertisement of these guitars calling them semi-hollow in construction was just very confusing, and that's why people are always kind of, do I really want one of those or not? If you like a regular Les Paul Custom, you're gonna like these guitars, I guarantee you. All I know is I need to document more of these because I'm curious about them now. So if you're sad that this one wasn't 100% stock, don't worry, I'm already making offers on other ones with F-holes. One of them's a true first-year Bantam because we need to document these weird beasts. And again, if anybody has a gold one, I really want to see it because I just think that finish would be very sweet. They just don't really feel that much different outside of being a little bit lighter in weight. But alright, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.
If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.